Today we're going to be looking at linear functions. So the first form we're going to be looking at is slope-intercept form. And that's why we have y equals mx plus b, where m stands for our slope, which means that's the change in our y divided by our change in our x. And this is that formula we use when we're given two coordinates, 2 points on our graph, when we need to find our slope. So you take your y2 and subtract your y1, then you take your x2 and subtract it by your x1. The b value is our y-intercept, so that's where it crosses and intersects at the y-axis. So our x value will always be at 0, and whatever that value is where it crosses our graph. So we want to find the slope and the y-intercept for the following functions. If I have y equals negative 3x plus 1, my y-intercept, which is my b, is at a positive 1, and my m, which is my slope, is at negative 3. So I want to write the equation of the line that passes through the given slope and the y-intercept. So I have y equals, if I'm using y equals mx plus b, my slope is 4 multiplied by x, and I have a positive 2/9 for my y-intercept. So now we look at writing the slope-intercept form from the equation of the graph. So I need to find a slope, and I need to find my y-intercept. So if I start with finding my slope, I just need to have 2 points, which we already have 2 points identified for us. So to find our slope, remember it's the change in y over change in x, which is our rise over run. So if I'm looking here, I'm going up 1, 2, 3. So I rose 3, and I went 1, 2, 3, 4, and went over to the right 4. So that means my slope is 3/4. My y-intercept is always where it crosses the y-axis. So this is my y-axis right here, and it meets at this point right there, which is a positive 1. So now I can write my equation. My slope is 3/4, and my y-intercept is at 1. So let's look at how we can graph from our equation onto here. So if I take a look, my slope is a negative 1, and my y-intercept is a positive 4. So when we graph this, you always want to start by graphing your y-intercept first, and then do your slope second. So if I start with my y-intercept at a positive 4, there's my first point. My slope of negative 1 tells me I need to move down 1 to the right 1. So if I go down 1 to the right 1, I'm there. And I'm going to keep going with my slope so I have a more accurate line. And I'm also going to work myself backwards. So if I went down 1 to the right 1, I'm going to go up 1 to the left 1. So here is my graph for that linear equation. So now we're going to take a look at standard form. So standard form is ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c have to be real numbers, and a and b are both not 0. So I can have a be 0, but b can't be, as well as vice versa. So the sophomore class holds a car wash to raise money. A local merchant donates all of the supplies. A wash costs $5 per car and $6.50 per van. So we want to define a variable for the number of cars. So if I'm dealing with cars, I'm going to say we're going to be dealing with the letter C. Now I'm going to define a different variable for the number of vans or trucks. So if I'm dealing with vans or trucks, I'm going to use the letter V. We want to write an equation in standard form to relate the number of cars and vans or trucks the students must wash to raise $650. So that's their total goal, is $650. So I am needing my equation to be in this format. I'm dealing with the price of a car being $5 and the price of a van or truck being $6.50. So if I'm saying my C is my cars, I am going to charge someone $5 for every car that shows up. Plus, I'm going to be charging $6.50 for every van or truck that shows up, and I want to reach $650. So we want to create an appropriate graph for the situation. So if I'm dealing with this, I'm going to label this axis my cars, and this one for my vans. Well, car should say how much car money, really. So if I'm looking at this, so there's a possibility we could have no vans and trucks show up and we could only have cars. So if that's the case, if no vans or car shows up, I'm not paying anyone no one's paying me $6.50. So that means I'm only left with 5 times C equals 650. So that's for only cars. That means my vans will be 0, or trucks. So then I would just divide both sides by 5. So that means I could have 130 cars show up. Sorry, I was correct. This is the number of cars and the number of vans. So I need to have at least 130 cars show up in order to make my $650. That's when there's no vans. So now the other way, if I want only vans or trucks, I'm no longer be charging the $5. I'm only looking at my $6.50. So then I would divide both sides by $6.50. So that means I would have 100 vans or trucks, and I would have 0 cars. So when I graph that, I'm right there. So my graph, I would connect those 2 points, would be there. So anywhere that falls on this line, I would make my $650. So for instance, if I looked at this point right here, if 50 cars were washed and 60 vans or trucks were washed, I would make my $650. So let's take a look at point-slope form. This is point-slope form. We have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We want to write the equation in the line in point-slope form. So we're given a point, and we're given a slope. So we have enough to write point-slope form. So if I take this, I have y. So when I'm looking at my y value, which is right here, it's going to be opposite. So if I have a positive 2, it's going to be y minus 2 equals my slope, which is negative 5/3, times by the quantity of x. And again, my x value is going to be opposite of what it is, so it'll be minus 4. And there's my equation for point-slope form. So now for this next one, I'm given up 2 points and no slope. So I need to figure out my slope in order to get to point-slope form. So we can look back at our slope form equation to try and figure out what our slope is, and you need to know your 2 points. So the first step would be that this is my x1, y1, this is x2, and y2. So to find my slope, I would take my y2, so negative 4, minus my y1, divided by my x2, minus by my x1. Negative 4 minus 7 is negative 11, divided by 1 minus 2, which is negative 1, and that reduces down to be a positive 11. So now I have a point and I have my slope. So here there's 2 different ways you can write this because we have 2 different slopes. You only need to have one of them. So if I use my first point in my slope, my equation would be y minus 7 equals 11 times by x minus 2. You could have also used your other point, so I'm going to kind of do that one over here. I'm going to highlight it instead. So you would have y plus 4 equals 11 times by x minus 1. So those 2 go together. Those 2 and then those 2. So 2 different answers, both are correct. So we want to find the equation for each line. So I'm going to use point slope form for both. We're going to label our lines. We're going to say this is A, and that's line B. So for line A, we want a slope and we want a point. So for B, my slope, if I'm here, I'm trying to get to this point, I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4. So I went down 4. Then I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope for B is -4/5. So if I'm looking at my line for B, my slope is -4/5. So I just have to pick one point. So I'm going to take this point right here. That point is at -1, +3. So if my y value is a +3, I'm going to write -3 and a +1. So now I'm going to take a look at line A. So again, I want my slope, and I need a point. So I'm going to start here, and I go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So I went down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 to the right. So my slope is -4/5 again, and I just pick a point. So if I choose this point right there, I am looking at 1, 2, 3. I'm at -4, 1. So my y value is a +1, so I write -1. My x value is a -4, so I write +4. We want to write an equation for the line that is parallel to the given line and passes through this given point. So when we do this, when I want something parallel means we have the exact same slope. So if I'm dealing with that, right now my slope is -2. So that is what I am going to use in my next equation. So I have a slope and I have a point. So I'm going to start off in point slope form. So I'm going to take my y, subtract 5, equals my slope of -2, x plus 3. Just because we started in slope-intercept form with this equation, we're going to rewrite this into slope-intercept form. This is point-slope form, so we can technically be done, but I want us to see how we can transform it back into this. So in order to do that, we distribute. So y minus 5 equals -2x minus 6. We add 5 to both sides to the like term. So y is going to equal -2x minus 1. And if we take a look at this equation and that one, they have the same slope but different y-intercepts, so we know that they are parallel. So now we want to look here, and the two lines are perpendicular. We want to find the equation of each line. So in order to do that, we're going to start in label. So this is my line A, this is my line B. So if I start with line A, I want to find a slope. And if you look, it doesn't intersect or y-intercept anywhere nice. We're going to use point-slope form. So I'm going to have that my line of y, let's find the slope first. So here are my 2 points. So 1, 2, 3. So I went down 3. To the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. To the right, 8. So my slope is -3/8. And I just need to pick a point. So I'm going to pick this point right here, which is at -3, -1. So if I'm at -3, -1, my y value would be a +1, and my x value would be a +3. So now I'm going to take a look at B. So for this one, before when we were dealing with parallel, they were the exact same slope. Now when I'm dealing with perpendicular, they have to be opposite reciprocals. So if I have a negative, it's now a positive, and the reciprocal means now I have 8/3. Since they're perpendicular, they intersect, so I can use my exact same points. So I can say +1 and +3. So we want to write an equation for the line that is perpendicular to the given line and that passes through the given point. So right now we have a point, which is good, but we do not have our slope. So we first need to, I rewrite this so we can identify our slope. So I'm going to add 10x to both sides of my equal sign. So I'm left with 8y equals 10x plus 3. Now I need to get the y by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And I have to divide everything by 8. So that means y is going to equal 10 divided by 8 actually reduces down to 5/4 x plus 3/8. So that means my slope right now is 5/4. But since I want it to be perpendicular, I want to use the opposite reciprocal, which means I'm going to be using -4/5 instead of 5/4. It has to be opposite and the reciprocal. So now I can use my point. I'm going to do the point slope form. So y minus 12 equals my perpendicular slope, which is -4/5, times by x minus 15. So again, this one is in standard form. We're going to just change this into slope-intercept form just so we have practice. Technically, we are done here, but let's look at this in slope-intercept form. So I would distribute my -4/5. So -4/5 x plus -4/5 times -15, which would turn into a positive 12. Add 12 to both sides. Y equals -4/5 x plus 24. If we wanted to be in standard form, what we could have done is at this point, oh, never mind, we're not going to do it that way. We'll either keep it in point slope or we'll keep it in slope-intercept form. We won't ever write things back into standard form.